They're plugged in.
They're plugged into being connected to source, or
Yeah.
not, like you say, unity consciousness there. And I've experienced this, and I think you were saying earlier that you've experienced it too, where you cease to exist. So there's the disappearance
You as a personality.
yeah, of the self.
Yeah.
And so when there's no self and other, or there's no subject and object. And so I experienced that in a psychedelic experience, where in order to experience that sense of oneness, the sense of I had to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's still a conscious awareness, and that conscious awareness is that, like, being one with everything.
Right.
And so is that where you think the animals are when they're in this state of non-human contemplation?
Pete Isaia is a trauma therapist and integration coach, supporting individuals and couples to become their most empowered and courageous, authentic selves. This podcast features inspiring conversations with graduates of Pete's shadow work courses and deep dives with experts in the arena of alternative health and current affairs. Here, we're not victims, we're volunteers. Are you in?
My guest for today's episode was born in the highlands of New Guinea in the early 1960s, growing up on a coffee plantation amidst the Wagi, I hope I said that right, Valley's native tribes and animals. Later in southeast Queensland, Australia, after finishing school, he took up full-time rock climbing for a number of years in an effort to find meaning and self-understanding through the challenges of climbing. Eventually, he ended up in Northern California for 25 years, working with a variety of animals, including chameleons, parrots, giant tortoises, horses, and Bactrian camels. During those years, among those animals, he learned about a process within nature that he refers to as natural contemplation, or the Earth's non-human cultures of natural contemplation, which is where we'll start our conversation today. Welcome, Stuart Camps.
Hi, Pete. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolute pleasure, as am I. Before we get on to non-human contemplation, I just want to go into a little bit of some of that stuff in the background there. I too spent about 10 years in California, so Northern California is a region I really relate to. But I also done quite a bit of rock climbing, obviously not 25 years of it. Can we start there? Like, what was it about rock climbing? For me, there's just you and the rock face, and it just brings everything into one moment, and it's like a meditation or a form of contemplation in itself. But what was it about you that drew you to that?
Well, I think I started off with abseiling at first, rappelling. And then after a little bit of that, it got a bit mundane, and climbing became interesting. And at that time, I didn't know of any other climbers around. So I just kind of hobbled together some stuff and did my own thing in a small way. But then gradually I found out that there was some actual real climbing going on in Queensland. So I got involved with that to, an increasing extent over the next 5 years. But the thing there's different things that drew me into it, but once in it, the things that I started to value about it was the um, I enjoyed placing myself between physical solid earth and the sky, which is out on your back, and being in that kind of zone between the two realms almost. And found that exhilarating, scary, contemplative, some educational. It informed me in different ways about life and so on, like that.
Were you always roped up, or did you ever do any free climbing and put yourself in those?
Free climbing is roped up, but I did free solo climbing, which is without ropes. I did that a little bit. I did in my 5 years of serious climbing. I did kind of 3 periods of time where I did some of that. You're climbing at, well, in my case, I was climbing at a lesser grade than what I could do with ropes, but still somewhat serious. And, I'd take it to a certain degree and then decide to pull out and go back to the ropes, because the longer you stay solo climbing, the more the risks are. But, obviously there's people too who really specialize in solo climbing and do it at very high grades and do it, ongoing. Do it a lot. But eventually, I decided something about the rock climbing wasn't working for me anymore in terms of my search for the meaning of life or whatever you want to,
Mm.
however you want to say it. But and so I kind of was a bit despairing of that, which I mentioned in the book, in my book. But um, that led me to a whole other life experience in due course. Um, yeah, I mean, rock climbing's only rock climbing, really, after all. And I wasn't prepared to really even make that much profound, like, psychological or spiritual use of it at that point. I was only in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of my favourite docos or films of, I think it might even be called Free Solo, about the guy who
Yeah.
free soloed El Capitan.
Yeah.
You've seen that?
Yeah.
What?
Alex Honnold.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
remarkable feat! Like,
Yeah.
if people haven't seen that, I'd encourage them to watch that. I mean, in terms of human endeavour,
It's
what
incredible.
an
Yeah.
amazing accomplishment! What a
Yeah.
unique individual!
Yeah. Yeah. He is. He's, I mean, he did a lot of rehearsal for that climb.
Oh yeah,
He climbed it multiple times on rope, and then he abseiled in a lot in preparation and worked on different moves while he was still roped in. And then finally figured he'd had it all dialed up well enough. And I think there was one day he was going to go do it, and he decided he wasn't ready. A few weeks later, I think he was ready, and it all happened.
yeah. And I think there's one part in the movie I remember where, because his partner, his girlfriend, was there,
Yeah,
and then he
yeah,
realised he couldn't do it if she was there,
yeah.
and then she decided to leave, and that's when he felt comfortable enough to do it. Another part I liked about that, I think it's the night before, and it's like he's going over every move in his mind, and he's like moving his hands when he goes right finger there, left there, toe hold there, as though he had every
Yeah, dialed in.
move
Yeah,
dialed in.
yeah. You get like that with a climb if you do it a few times, or
Yeah.
even to some degree if you do it once or twice.
Mm.
Serious climb, because you have to, you come off the climb and you can lay back in bed at night that night and recount every single move you did on that route
Wow.
with accuracy. And a lot of climbers sit around a campfire at night describing climbs to each other.
Yeah, I do. I do. I looked into a little bit of the history of the free solo climbers, and we've lost many of them, haven't we?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a numbers game, I guess. The longer, like you say, the longer you're in it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it happens when they're coming back down. They finish the climb and they're kind of at the end of the day or whatever. They're a little tired, or it's getting dark, or
Mm.
large proportion of accidents happen that way on
Yeah.
the actual climb, because when you're on the climb, you're switched on completely.
Mm.
So
I think it's the same for things like, um, climbing, mountain climbing. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
mountaineering.
that's mostly on the way down
Mhm.
that the
Or an avalanche
accidents
just
occur.
hits you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had your dance with that, but quite a long and intense one by the sound of it. And I'm envious in a way because, I only flirted with it. When I was living in America, I did some in Colorado
Yeah.
and places, and I'm actually afraid of heights. So for me,
Oh,
it was a
that's
good
intense.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I did do it, to
Mm.
confront that fear.
Mm.
I like to face my fears.
Mm.
You moved to Northern California. Oh, before we get onto that, I'm just going to
Yeah,
plug
plug
your
the book.
book. So you've actually written a book, which is in itself an accomplishment. I've started a book, but your book is called Lightning, Thunder, Cows. I've started reading it. I've confessed to you earlier before we started, I'm only a third the way through.
Yeah, you're a busy
But
man.
I do intend to finish it. But just that in itself, I know, well, I don't know what it takes, but I can imagine. How many years?
I thought I'd have it done in a year.
Hmm.
Um, then I thought it would be done in another year, and I had different versions of it, but this was finished. Took 6 years,
Yeah, wow.
and many rereads, lots and lots of tweaking, and I had to have a good editor, proofreader, who was very, very diligent and basically as passionate about it as I am. And so we worked really well together, and hashed it out many times until it was pretty much right. I mean, I could go through it again and tweak it again, but
Hmm.
good books aren't usually written once in one go. They're written, a lot of good authors talk about it. I came across this early on, that they 65 rewrites before they publish, before they're satisfied, just to tweak every little bit and connect everything up. And so, yeah, that was a real process doing that book. And it also helped me reconsider and reevaluate and um, assimilate a lot of what's in the book to a degree I hadn't done prior to sitting down and spending the time to do that. Yeah.
I've heard people describe it as can be a therapeutic process writing a book, and other people describe it as kind of vulnerable because you're kind of revealing deep aspects of yourself. Did you have either of those kind of?
There was a bit of that came up in a couple of instances. Yeah. I had, when I was rock climbing, I had a pet crow, an Australian crow, who used to live with us, and was uh, became problematic around the household. Started chasing my mother and sister around and pecking their ankles and stuff like that. And so finally, he had to go, and I took him out to a cliff. Where am I going with this? What was the question?
Doesn't matter. Keep going.
Oh,
You
yeah,
took the crow out to
no.
the
So I
cliff.
was writing about that story and taking him out to the cliff,
Yeah.
and leaving him there. So we pulled up, and he jumped out of the car and flew off. He sat in the back seat for the whole hour and a half drive, looking out the window and wobbling a little bit. And then we got there, and he took off and flew around, and we set up camp and went off climbing. And by he came by and found us. And I'm up halfway up the climb, and he lands on my shoulder and snuggles into my neck. And then he'd camp in the tree above. He'd roost in the tree above our campsite at night and wake us up in the morning. And a few days later, I took off and went back home, went back to the coast, and left him there. And he sat in the tree watching us pack up, and didn't come down, didn't try to get back in the car. It was almost like he sensed this was time for change, and maybe he'd met some crows there or something. But and I drove off, and never saw him again. I heard that he stayed around for a little bit. There were some German climbers there at the time, and they said he stayed for a few days more, and then they didn't see him again. But he, writing that piece, actually kind of started sobbing, which was not entirely surprising, but it was a bit. It was a very deep relationship. I was probably closer to that crow. That crow showed me more affection and love and trust and connection than pretty much anything ever, anyone, and anyone,
Than any human.
yeah,
Right.
before or since.
Right. Because have you been married before?
I've been married, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh, I
what
should, yeah, and that was different. That's a whole different thing.
we won't go into that, but
Animals are different than
yeah,
people.
well, I know that. I think there are animal people, and they're like I love animals, but I've I once had a pet dog, and I definitely had a relationship with that dog. But I don't form. I don't think my temperament is that I form very deep bonds with animals. But I know that there are people that's like really form these deep bond and connections, and even feel like they're communicating with them, and
Yeah,
are resonating and vibing and all the rest of it. And I get the impression that you're a deep lover of animals, and have deep relationship with them.
oh yeah, yeah. I wouldn't. I've done this multiple times over the years. I don't characterize myself as an animal lover.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
like it's a thing.
Okay.
It's too real for that. Animal,
Right.
like the people who come up to me and they'll say, and I apologize to whoever they were, but they come up and say, oh, I'm an animal lover. I love animals. And I'm like, but they're really not. It's a deeper,
Yeah.
that's more of a emotional
Mm.
thing that's somewhat imaginary or hopeful or, well wishing or something like that. Whereas a real relationship with an animal is it's just solid and difficult and challenging and ugly and beautiful and all of that's in there and challenging, and the reflection you get back to yourself and
Sounds like my
is
relationship
intense.
with my partner.
Yeah, yeah. And if that's how it was for me. And so when I was a kid in New Guinea, as I mentioned in the book, I had a whole host of animals, New Guinea animals, like the native birds and reptiles and some of the mammals, and had a kind of a menagerie out in the backyard down the hill a little bit. And uh, it was, at a certain point, I just sent them all off to a sanctuary, which is down in another valley, the Baia River Sanctuary. And I did that because I didn't want to have these animals dying on me, who I'd formed these connections with, and the responsibility of that. And I think I was also getting a little bit older, and responsibilities were changing, but it's a real thing. Um, anyway,
How did you come to? Were you born in New Guinea or
yeah,
grew up? You were born there. What did your dad or parents do? How did you end up being born there? I mean, it's one of the most remote and wild
yeah.
places on the planet, untouched.
My father was worked for the Australian Museum in Sydney. They did an expedition to New Guinea, which he was a part of. He was 21, I think. He was young.
Wow.
He was a preparator in the museum, but he went on this field collecting expedition. Anyway, while he's up there, he fell in love with New Guinea, and some opportunities arose, and he came back to Australia after that, flew back there he got married and went back, and they went into Mount Hagen in 1954, I think, and started up a coffee plantation,
Oh,
along with a bunch of other people that were doing it at the same time. Other people from Australia or wherever had gone up there too. So there was a little community of people starting up these plantations, and New Guinea Hagen was very small then, and I think the main street or the back street of the town was the airstrip.
oh,
The
okay.
planes came in twice a month and dropped off supplies and stuff like that, and flew off
Wow.
again. That was probably getting pretty quiet here on the microphone, aren't I? So yeah, he was there and had a family there, and that's how I happened. And
And so, I mean, there's still tribes living very tribal up in PNG, isn't
yeah,
there?
yeah, there are. If you go out from the towns, there are
Yeah.
definitely. They're all influenced pretty much now by some
Yes.
Western stuff, but cell phones are prevalent and all of that. But the tribal people, in my day, I mean, when I was a kid, they were still pretty established. Um, and growing up around them and being around them was awesome, really. These other cultures of powerful people, and when they'd get together and do their dances and stuff like that, their tribal sing-sings, for a little kid, a little white kid, it was pretty, pretty incredible, pretty
I
impressive.
I bet. For those who don't know what Sing Sing is, look it up. Like I've only seen documentaries about it. What I saw was like maybe 30, 40 different tribes all dressed alike, and all like birds of paradise feathers, and some of the most amazing, I don't know, you wouldn't call them costumes or outfits or whatever, but so colourful, and they looked like birds of paradise themselves. And
Yeah,
I mean, I'm quite naive. What I saw was all the men dress up, and it's like a courtship ritual, and all the women look quite plain, and they're there watching the men dance and looking to pick a mate, and
yeah,
it kind of almost mimicked, how birds choose a mate. It's usually the male who's more colourful,
yeah,
and he does a big dance, and
yeah.
the woman, the female bird, chooses the bird that does the most exotic dance, or whatever.
Right.
Can you tell me a bit about the Sing Sing and your experience with it?
Well, I was a kid, so I'm not really steeped in the whole thing, but um, yeah, the men dress up. They cover themselves in pig grease. They paint themselves with all kinds of, natural dyes in those days, pretty much, I think. They're probably bringing in some paints in those days too, but and then they have these headdresses that are passed down from father to son sometimes. Some can be several generations old, and they keep them they used to keep them in their huts, in the rafters, and the smoke from the fire would keep them from being moth-eaten and so on. So they'd last quite a long time, and they'd be dry and mold-free and all that. But anyway, they'd deck themselves out, and then they'd have these leaves on their backsides, over their backsides, which in Pidgin English, that was called ass grass.
Ask grass.
Nice big broad leaves. And then down the front, they'd have a thing called a lap lap, which was made out of native materials, local materials, fibers and things. Um, kundu drums. The men would have these kundu drums, kind of an hourglass shaped
Oh
drum
yeah.
with a lizard skin on the top or some kind of animal skin. And I mean, the thing that I'm remembering right now is seeing these men in lines, maybe 50 or 100 long, and several of them in lines, and they're hitting the drums and they're chanting and they're going up and down on their toes. and they're vertical up and down, and the laps out the front are going like waves all the way along. It's just like it's been synchronized. It's just incredible. And then the pounding of their heels back on the grounds that the earth there is pretty loamy, pretty thick, you know, volcanic loam. So you can, standing not too far away or even a little way away, you can feel the ground thudding with their impact. And they go and just chant. And it's just like, wow, these men are so impressive. And that was one of the things that I used to kind of it was curious to me. I'd see that, experience that, and then or even versions of that weren't even that, just ordinary native men sitting in a hut in a village, or cooking you some sweet potato and feeding you and stuff like that. And then going over to the golf club, all the white men are sitting up around the bar and sucking back tinnies or
Right.
glasses of beer and whatever, and smoking and yakking on, and then you go back out there like, what the hell,
The contrast.
There was this one little man named Jimpana who worked for my father, and he just a real simple little guy. But to me, the interactions I had with him, he didn't have much English. Even his pidgin English wasn't great. He was so much more of a man to me than all the white men I knew, including my father in a certain way. He was just grounded, earth, big feet, like straightforward, in your eye. It's like, anyway, that was like a big contrast for me that I always appreciated, having that experience and seeing there's different kinds of men, and the traditional New Guinea man, it was a patriarchal society, but the original patriarchy is not the patriarchy we might deride today. They were strong men, but they were generally kind and good, and had good intentions for family and tribe and the landscape and the wildlife and all that. That patriarchy now, been with culture having fallen apart in New Guinea, that traditional culture, there's a lot that patriarchy has become abused by a good number of the men in the country now, and there's a lot of denigration of women and stuff like that that's going on now that didn't happen back in the traditional days.
Did that come about by Western influence, alcohol?
Western influence, alcohol, moving out of the villages and going to live in the cities or the towns and losing contact with their elders. They mentioned in the book there was one conversation my dad had repeatedly with some of the elders who knew him from when he showed up when he was 21, more or less. It was early 1975, late 1974, independence is on the horizon, and the old men didn't want it. They weren't ready. They were like, we're not ready. We need 10, 20 more years, this country. But it was happening, and it wasn't going to stop. And they said, we're losing control of our young men. They've gone to school, they're educated, they think we don't know anything, they don't listen to us anymore. So we don't know how things are going to go after independence. So, that's the breakdown of the cultures. Those men were incredible.
Yeah.
Those older men.
When I hear you say that, like, one of the conversations that I'm curious about, and I've had conversations like this with other guests on my podcast, it's around the question, like, what is a man? Like, what is it that makes a man? And not in the same way that Matt Walsh asks, what is a woman, in terms of the trans culture, but in terms of, because everyone will probably have a different version of what they think a man is. I've got my ideas around it.
Every culture would have a different version.
Yeah, and it's got nothing to do with the size of you or how much money you have or the kind of car you drive or how big your house is, although maybe some of those things come into it in some cultures.
Yeah.
But I'm curious from your viewpoint, what was it about what qualities or traits did you see in the men there that you really admired that influenced your idea of what a man is?
Well, just, memories of a kid, but they stood up straight. They They looked you in the eye, they seemed generous, they seemed, strong and firm and clear and funny and happy and,
Mm.
hard and soft and all the things were kind of observable. All those kind of things were observable, whereas the white men were just kinda like, "Eh," you know, work, um, work, talk, drink, whatever, smoke, make money. There was something different, there was something richer in the native
Yeah.
people, something broader, maybe
Mm.
not richer, but filled out more in some way. Their being would seem more filled out, you
Mm.
know?
Are you curious about how working with your shadow can improve your life and your relationships? Every Tuesday night at 6 p.m, I host a confidential live Q&A call where you can ask questions, access resources, and receive personal coaching from me. I have so many people come to me ready to do their shadow work, but they tell me they just can't afford the financial investment of one of my programs. So, to make professional shadow work accessible to as many of you as possible, I've created the Shadow Work Academy. The Academy is an online space where you get instant access to my inspired community of like-minded individuals, doing the work and taking full responsibility for their lives. You'll have the opportunity to hear other members' stories and share your own. Within the community, you can post your questions, challenges, and breakthroughs, as well as seek professional support and guidance from me personally on the live weekly call. Within the Academy, you'll also find my men's sexual mastery course called The Sexual Samurai, and my introductory level shadow work course, Shadowboxing Level 1. Access to the Academy is 100% free until December 24. If you join before then, your access will be free for life. How would you describe like your felt sense of being when you're around a man like that? How did you respond in your body or when you're around that kind of man, and then
Yeah.
you go down to the golf club and they're drinking the beers and sucking back the ciggies?
Um,
Like what's your body? Is it
I don't
contracting,
know
expanding?
then altogether, I can't
Right.
recall that altogether now, but just now talking about it, I can kind of extrapolate or whatever, but, I guess closer to being around a big camel or something like that, or a small camel, a bit, an animal that was, you know, we Westerners were just, like, so cranked up in here,
Yes.
and everything down the middle is sort of narrow,
Right.
whereas the traditional people tended to be more broad here,
Mm.
more perceptual, less conceptual, more connected. And if you a little kid, you like somehow you can feel that. You go over to the pub, and it's like,
Mm.
shrill voices, and it's just like different.
It's
And
almost like the Western man's focused or myopic, and these tribal men got broader peripheral vision, and so maybe even more connected to nature.
more connected to nature, to different energies, and
Yeah.
in their own way. Some probably way more than others. They're not, and at the same time, they're not all perfect beings.
Mm.
They've got
No.
their problems and their
Sure.
foibles, and
Mm.
there's all different personalities and characters and stuff like that, just like with anything. But in Fiji, I felt the same thing.
Mm.
The Fijian men had this same kind of, you know, in Fiji they would call it mana. You've heard of mana,
Yes.
chi. We were just
Yes.
like embodied
Yeah. Embodied
and
masculine.
embodied, just masculine, embodied. The women were embodied in their
Mm.
own strong, vital way.
Right. So the Western man is maybe head dominant or caught up in the cognitive,
Yeah.
pursuing ideologies where not so much embodied or in the heart or connected to nature so much. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Aboriginals too. The Still today, I'm sure out there, there's people around, but you know, before contact, 1772 or whatever it was, that was incredible people.
yeah.
From what I've read and from what I've experienced in New Guinea and Fiji, and even in Saudi Arabia a little bit, there was a sense some of the men out in the desert Bedouin had a
Mm.
bit of some of them had a bit of this, some of them didn't anymore for me. But yeah. So
But
all of that was a real learning kind of experience and contrast with my own society, and like there's something, what's going on with, like, and then we moved to Australia, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I can swear here a bit.
Of course you can. I know you share in the book where I think you were 14 or something, you moved from the
Yeah,
New Guinea highlands to the Gold Coast here in
13,
Queensland,
13 almost, I
13
think,
to
yeah.
go to boarding school. I mean, that must have been a huge culture shock.
Oh, it was, yeah,
How did you
it was.
cope?
I barely did.
You'd be right.
I mean, it was one of the things that was one of the catalysts for me to start looking more deeply into existence, my life, cultures. Where's this all going? What am I doing? What the hell am I doing here? You know, and not, and it wasn't a, it was rough. It
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
like an easy transition at
No.
all. Um, I'd left, my homeland was gone, and all the people even if I didn't know them, they were all out there living in the valley. And as a little kid, I could show up in a village and be welcomed, and somebody in the village would know me.
Mm,
I might not know anybody in the village, but somebody there knew me.
mm.
And that happened a few times. They'd kind of take me under their wing and point me in the right direction to get home or whatever, feed me. But you know, I went into boarding school initially, and then I didn't. That was short lived. My parents moved then soon after that, and I moved out and lived with them again. But um, it was probably a good 3 years before I was like, okay, I'm here, I'm okay.
Wow, it took you 3 years
Yeah,
to
to really like
transition.
to go from, I had a like this to Australia. It's like
Mm, mm,
some of the lingo, some of the language, some of the attitudes. It's like,
mm.
you know, not me, not for me.
And then what, did you move out west from the Gold Coast? Did your parents move out west, or like where did you end up after Gold Coast?
Gold Coast was Gold Coast, and I was rock climbing from the Gold Coast
Yeah.
initially, and then traveled with rock climbing across up and down the coast, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and then finally the rock climbing kind of caved in on me. It was no longer interesting.
Mm,
I just like, this is not working for me anymore, and it was a bit of a panic. That was a bit of a panic moment because it was like, what the hell am I going to do?
with my
I'm
life.
22. My career in rock climbing's over, and I'm like trying to hold on to it, but it's falling away, and I'm not. I fell off the cliff, and I um, I'd already had been reading a little bit of spiritual literature, some Eastern stuff, a little bit of Western stuff, but um, so that kind of after that crisis, kind of regathering myself from that crisis, I started to look into that more seriously. Anyway, yeah, so that's a bit of a preamble, maybe.
Yeah, so you
We can
at
come
some
back
at
and
yeah,
circle back if
sure.
need
At
be.
some point you ended up in Northern California.
Yeah.
So here you are in southeast Queensland, Australia. You've acclimatized somewhat, but you're in your 20s or whatever. You don't know what you're going to do with your life. What was the spark or the introduction that got you from Queensland to Northern California? How did that take place? And
I'd like to come back to that if you don't
sure,
mind. I'd
yeah.
like to kind of just refocus a little bit and come back to one of the things you said earlier about natural contemplation.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to get into that a little
Yeah,
bit,
let's get into
and
that.
then come back to where
Absolutely.
you are now.
Yeah. Can you explain your concept of natural
Yeah,
non-human
so
contemplation?
natural contemplation is a term to basically describe a process that's going on in nature perennially, um, without interruption, really, on all levels of nature, from rocks to animals to trees, all of that, even the big process, or the big and the small processes within nature. So natural contemplation, if you think about conditional nature, physical conditional nature, it's transient, it's changing, it's always changing. It's sort of got a constancy to it as well, because it's there all the time, apparently. But it's completely always changing. So we appear in a body, and it's changing, and then it dies. And as is the case with all animals and trees and everything else. So it kind of rationally, to some degree, even rationally, it kind of can make some sense that within this complex of nature, there would be a process that would take that into account, this changeability. And this is what I describe as natural contemplation, which is because animals, we'll just focus on animals for now. They, without the conceptual mind that we were talking about a minute ago, with some animals have some conceptual mind, a very, it's, but primarily it's this perceptual mind. And in living in that context allows their whole body, physical being, to be sensitive to how vulnerable it is and how it's mortal. If you're an animal and you're living in somewhere out there, you are very aware that you're part of the food chain. Not that there's a chain, but you know you're going to be eaten if you don't. Sooner or later, you're going to be eaten, no
Right.
matter what you do.
Yeah.
And so feeling that without the conceptual mind turning that into something that we do, but we'll get onto that in a minute, but they are able to feel that fear, that vulnerability fully through the body. And their response to that, their natural response to that, is to surrender into that awareness and to basically feel the fear fully, feel through the fear, and then surrender into life rather than contract around threat and possible death. So this is a sort of a capability that animals have. We also have the same capability, but we don't use it anymore. These traditional people we were kind of touched on, they have more of it, and probably anciently had much more of it. So we feel vulnerable like an animal does. We know we're going to die, but we go to mind with it, and we articulate something about it. We tell stories about it. We find we imagine we might be able to avoid it or escape it. And even today, people are talking about living forever and all of that kind of thing, which people have always talked about that, but some Western people. So natural contemplation is this virtue that exists throughout nature, where all these beings out there being hunting, living, existing, surviving. There's this thread of contemplation going on, which is their connection to. It's a kind of a perennial connection to divine awareness, if you want to call it that. So they're participating on another level than we are.
Mm.
And this is to me, it's very ordinary in a way. It's it's something that's not really talked about. People haven't discussed it. Haven't come across a biologist who's brought it up, or a zoologist, or an animal trainer, or a adventurer, or a spiritual teacher, or it's just not there. Even in the ancient texts, there's barely any mention of this profundity that's going on all around us, for different reasons. We can discuss that a bit maybe as we go along, but and I came across this through. I was introduced to this process and by my spiritual teacher, Arida, and that's what took me to California. I was invited to go there because I had the background with animals and stuff like that. I was invited to go there and take up a residency there with taking care of a little collection of animals that existed there at the time that he called Fianomo Zoo. And so I went over to try it out and ended up staying 25 years. But and it's called Fianomo Zoo, which I always thought was initially I thought this was a really dumb name. It doesn't make sense to me. You've got a damn zoo and you're calling it Fear No More. You're like, kind of, what's going on? But what he talks about, what he described there is this natural contemplation is the animals are going from feeling through the fear into the disposition of fearing no more in their participation in inherent awareness that is there, so all animals are connected to that on some level. And it might go up and down depending on what their activity level is or what they've got to focus on. They might drop it a little bit, but it's the thread of it is always there. And then when they have time, they can chill out on a branch or under a log, they can drop out and lose, even to the degree of losing body consciousness and being in this contemplative, fearing no more state. Cats are very profound at this, and they can, jump up and get into action very quickly, but they can also go into this process very quickly. And the purring has got something to do with it too. Adidas talked about this a bit and said that the cats purr because they're aware of life as energy. They're participating in life as energy. And that allows them to have this purring mechanism active in their throats, but throughout their whole body, really. So that's.
Thank you for opening up that conversation and for that definition of contemplation, because I read I'm reading your book and you've talked about this non-human contemplation, and I didn't really understand what it is. I've got a better understanding of it now, and it's around that.
Better rewrite the book.
Yeah. No, it's just that you did a great job of articulating it, and that it's that the animals are aware of their position in the food chain because they're totally connected to nature and they don't have this overriding cortex, this primate human brain to override those natural instincts. And so there's this knowingness that at some point they're going to be eaten, and so of course that's going to have a fear response in them, but rather than override that fear response, they go into it and through it, and to a point of fear no more. And when they're at the no fear, there's is it a state of contemplation that arises?
Yeah, he described it as readily participating in divine awareness.
Okay, yeah.
So you can, however you want to say that, but that's what he said.
One thing that's always struck me is when I've seen a horse standing motionless for what looks like hours on end, and I'm like, how can they do that? Like, do they not get bored? And then maybe this is what you're talking about, is that they're in some sort of zone of contemplation or connectedness. So is it assumed that that's a blissful state for the animal, a pleasant state?
You could assume that.
Could you call that? What do you? It's a state of connection to the divine. Are you saying
it's a non-dual state?
Non-dual state, right?
And it's not preempted by literature, books, sacred texts, instruction from somebody. They kind of have it within themselves to do naturally, unless they're screwed over by people to the point where they lose that mechanism.
They're plugged in.
They're plugged in.
They're plugged into being connected to source, or not, like you say, unity consciousness. I guess that, and I've experienced this, and I think you were saying earlier that you've experienced it too, where you cease to exist. So there's the disappearance
as a personality.
Of the self.
Yeah.
And so when there's no self and other, or there's no subject and object. And so I experienced that in a psychedelic experience, where in order to experience that sense of oneness, the sense of I had to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's still a conscious awareness, and that conscious awareness is that, like, being one with everything.
Right.
And so is that where you think the animals are when they're in this state of non-human contemplation?
It's where they are variously, or by degrees. I've come across some animals that don't seem to do this very much for whatever reasons. We one of our camels in our camel herd. I wondered why the guy that sold it to me unseen gave me such a good price for this young bull. When I met him, I realized. But we took him on, and we loved him, and we worked with him. But he was all kinds of messed up, psychophysically. I joke about it, but I used to characterize him as ADD, Tourette's, Asperger's, and something else. It's like he was all over the place. And but I was able to work with him over years, hundreds of hours with him one on one. And some of the other camels did some work with him too. Um, and he's still quirky, but he changed. His conductivity, the energetics of his bodily flow of energy through his body and awareness and stuff started opening up and softening, and he became a actual valued member of the herd. Whereas early on, he was like, we don't want this guy around. He was too much trouble. But so there's animals like that, and then there's animals around people who get all kinds of messed up because of the way people relate to them.
That makes sense.
From penthouse chihuahuas to show jumping horses to whatever, people just beautiful pet dog or something like that. They can be very sweet and benevolent and all sorts of things, all sorts of positive things, but if you look at them and relate to them to something, a wilder version of themselves or something like that, there's something not there. It's like us compared to a traditional Aboriginal
Right.
man. There's like kind of, there's something so concrete about Western man. There's something so invisible a bit about, like, what are you looking at? Is like that man doesn't stop at the skin. He keeps going. He's out here somewhere. And that's the same with animals. They have these big auras or energy fields, a lot of that, healthy, balanced animals. And, yeah, so I can keep rumbling on. But
No, it's great because it's like I was saying, like I love animals. I'm fascinated by animals. Like if ever I'm watching something on a screen, it's usually a wildlife documentary.
yeah,
So I just love nature and animals. But in terms of my temperament, personality, there's some blockage in me that I feel like I don't want to interact with them because I feel like I'm only going to corrupt them.
yeah,
And
that's
that
interesting.
and that I have this theory that animals in nature, in a natural setting, are not neurotic, but the moment they come into contact with humans, they can develop maybe neurotic tendencies.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe not just contact, but some significant contact might get them that way with the wrong kind of interactions. But there are so many horses out there that are just really messed up. People's horses, pet horses, show horses, whatever. Um, they're going back to the contemplative. So there's this contemplative thing I've been talking about, but then in a herd of horses or camels or elephants or whatever, a flock of birds, a hive of bees, there's a contemplative culture, contemplative process going on within the culture. So before I move on, I'll just say, if you talk to Western man, or most people forget about Western man, just if you talk to a scientist, he'll say, the the most important things for an antelope or whatever is uh, food, water, shelter, protection, kind of thing. Breeding, they're the five things. But nobody ever talks about this contemplative thing, and it's the primary thing in a herd culture. If you have a herd, a matriarch, usually the matriarchal herds, group cultures tend to be matriarchal, not all of them. But again, if it's patriarchal, it's a different kind of patriarchy than we think of today. It's benevolent. They grow up in this culture. So you have a foal growing up in a horse herd, and it's got a mother, it's got aunties, there's other young horses around, and as it's growing up, it's nurtured in the direction of respect, responsibility, sharing, giving, taking, whatever different qualities that you find in a herd that's put together well. there are herds that might, for various times, not have good leadership, and sometimes a bully type personality will rise. Kind of then the herd has to endure this character. But if they have good leadership, they have. I'm just being hypothetical here, somewhat, but say there's a good female lead. She's the matriarch, a mare, and then there might be one or two other mares that sort of assist her, and then there might be a couple of males or a male that assists her. And if they all get along well, this could be a beautiful culture to grow up in. And everybody's helping this young foal understand where it is, understand how to be safe, how to move quickly, how to pay attention to the leaders. And there's a whole schooling that goes on there that's very complex and very elegant. Um, and then that horse grows up in a culture, and it's like it comes out as an adult, wide open, intelligent, resourceful, capable, caretaking, strong, brave, whatever, all those good qualities that are inherent within all of us that get messed up by by inappropriate culture
Mm.
and get lost.
I don't know if you've read this book. I read a book in my 20s, The Continuum Concept by
No.
Jean Liedloff. I think she was an anthropologist, and she studied how tribes in some South American, in the Amazon tribes there, how they raise their children, and she had this concept of like they follow the natural continuum, so they don't have any outside influences or dogma or doctrination about how to do this. No, don't do it that way, do it this way. There was a way of always doing things that was a natural continuum of things,
I see.
and they just followed that. And so she studied these, and she found that the children's didn't develop things like neuroses, anxiety. They didn't have a lot of the conditions that
Yes,
Western children would have, tantrums, all this kind of stuff. And she put it down to that they were very attuned to the child's needs, and that the child's needs were always honoured. And that the moment you break the child's needs, it creates like a microneurosis or disconnection. And that if you have many of those over time, then that continuum gets broken. For example, I think for the first 12 months, the child is never out of arms. It's always passed from one person. It's not locked in a room and the door closed and a monitor on to make sure the baby's crying or not. It's like it's always in arms. And so they're always responding to the natural needs of the organism, and that there's a natural continuum of that.
Yeah.
And when you're describing the herds of the horses, it's as though each horse understands the needs of the foal and responds in different ways,
Right.
so that the foal's needs are being attended to. And if those needs are attended to, it develops in the natural way and becomes, like a well-balanced, adult
Individual,
individual at the end. And so, I think, if I look at human culture, we have so many competing ideas for how to raise a child, for instance, and they all think to some extent they're right, or that their ideas of how to raise a child is the appropriate way. I've got a 13-month-old daughter, and I'm kind of looking at what's her needs in the moment.
Yeah.
And responding and when I don't know, I'll do a bit of research as to what might be going on with her, because I want her to grow healthy and developed. And so I see that there is probably a natural order of things in terms of a young being's growth and development, and that certain needs are meant to be met, and when they're not met, that's when we get this break in the continuum, and that's when neuroses or the culture, the natural culture of the development and evolution of that being gets interrupted, and you end up with a disturbed being. Is that kind of similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, there's also lots of other cultures. There was an African culture where the kids, when they got to 2.5 or something, they were put in the kids' village, and the kids raised themselves. And the parents had very little to do with them. I don't think that culture exists anymore, but it's probably outlawed at some point. And it seemed to work fairly well for the most part, anyway.
Wow.
But that's unusual. But like we had a big Bactrian bull camel, Jelly Baba, big black, almost black, and real sweet, real kind, real benevolent. very strong. And I watched him do this with different individuals, but in this case, it was a young baby who was probably 4 weeks old. So barely, still definitely drinking milk and starting to nibble, barely eating real food, solid food though, just a bit. And I'd put the hay down. You know, they had a big pasture, so they could free graze and stuff. But I'd bring extra hay each day and give them as a supplement. And put the hay down in different clumps. And Jelly Baba would be on his clump eating his hay. The group would move around sometimes and push and shove it a little bit, but the little baby would show up, come right in on Jelly Baba, and basically demand the hay with some barking and spitting, you know. And Jelly Baba, this huge bull, would look at it and just walk away and go over somewhere else. No protest, nothing. That little baby, up to a certain age, is got license to express itself as fully and freely as it wants to, without any pushback, for the most part. The mother might have some other words to say to that, to the baby at different times, but this is the big bull, and he just walks off, and he leaves this little one who now feels strong.
I've pushed that big bull off.
Or he's been heard. He's said his piece. His space has been respected.
Yeah.
And he begins life that way.
Right.
And if that continues, he comes out the top the same, or even more informed. And we had that going back to Hi-Ho, that recalcitrant camel initially. At one point, I was at a loss as to how I could progress with him, and I decided to put him in the pasture with Jelly. There were a few other camels in there too. I figured Jelly would straighten this guy out pretty quickly. So in goes this camel, Hi-Ho, and feeding time happens, and the hay goes down, and Hi-Ho comes along, and he's insane. He's mental, and he screams. He's standing over there about 30 yards away from Jelly, and he screams. And I'm thinking, right now, go get him, Jelly. Deal with him. Fix him. Do it your camel way. And Jelly Baba puts up with this screaming for a few minutes, and then he leaves, like he did with the little baby. Hi-Ho comes in and eats the hay. And I'm like, Jelly, you're wimping out on me, man. What? I'm not understanding what's going on yet. Haven't seen the progression. And as the months go by, it took a few months. Now Hi-Ho's coming 10 feet away, screaming. Jelly rolls his eyes and walks away. Eventually, Hi-Ho comes in on the hay. He's going. His screaming was he was scared of. He was like scared. He wasn't in this fear no more disposition. He was just living in his like anxiety-ridden body. And eventually you can sort of see them standing together eating, and Jelly more or less has his arm over him, and Hi-Ho's going, but they're eating together. And Hi-Ho's now coming out of it. He's being healed through this. And it took all that time. And I don't know if that was even in Jelly's mind that he was taking the camel that way. This is just who he was. This is how it worked. This is how he would be. And I saw Jelly, jumping to another little story here. A mother and daughter came in. Daughter was about this high, 3 maybe, 3 or 4. And these big camels all over the place. Sorry.
That's right. You like to talk with your hands.
Yeah.
You've got Italian in you.
Maybe. Spanish. He approaches this mother and daughter. They're holding hands. And the little daughter pulls around behind the mother. Jelly Baba had gone down to look at her, and she pulled behind the mother. So he lifted his head. I really enjoyed seeing this. He lifted his head, and he was looking right at the mother, and he nuzzled her a little bit, kept an eye on the girl, went back down. She pulled around again, and then he interacted with the mother at her face again. Then he went down. This took about 5 minutes or so, Then he went down and put his mouth, soft mouth, over their hands, kind of held hands with them, which was really cool. And then he let go, went back up to the mother, And then the little girl came out, and he went down to her, and she stayed this time, and she petted him and giggled, and he blew some hot air on her face, and she was fine now. And he took off, and he was finished, and he went off to join the herd. But he stayed there to engage this with her. It was pretty cool. So that's sort of the wisdom of if you work with the animals in a consensual kind of a way and let them see that's the way I was working with the camels as well, to let the camel find its place of integrity with me. So just to explain that a bit further, the way I learned to work with the camels was through with camels, if you force train them a lot of the time, almost all of the time, they will do what you want them to do, but they will get you one day if they can when you're not looking. There's kind of a resentment in them. They want to be respected, and if they're not respected, they're going to find a way to let you know. And so I didn't want to train camels in that traditional kind of a way, and I started searching through the horse world, and went to natural horsemanship, and there's some merit there, but I didn't care for that altogether. And then I came across couple of women in California, not too far from where I lived, and I signed up with them and did some intensives and 3-month intensives and with one of them and some other times. And this approach to horse work is developed by Carolyn Resnick, and it has its origins when she was 9. She became part of a wild horse herd in Southern California, like an actual kind of signed up, bona fide, adopted member. And that's a whole thing I won't get into. But to begin a relationship with a horse or a camel or anything really, any animal really, and humans too, in a certain different way, but because there's all this talking and stuff going on with people. But if you were to give me a camel to start training or a horse, preferably I'd have a nice big spacious paddock to put it in. And I would go sit. I'd take a chair or find a log or a rock or whatever, and I'd go sit. If the horse was really dangerous, I'd sit outside. I'd go sit, though, every day, as much as possible, for as long as possible, at least an hour each day, and make that a routine. And in the beginning, it's this slow process. It picks up in momentum and speed in terms of going somewhere with it once the relationship's formed, but you've got to give it time. And for some horses, it can happen pretty quickly. Some camels, some will take longer, and some of it's dependent on their previous experiences with people. But you just sit, and I have a crop or a wooden, like a reed, and I sit with that. I might read, I might meditate, I might whatever. And then very quickly, some horses will come up and approach you and want to get involved, and that's kind of. And then there'll be others that'll take days to come over. Like, not interested. Eventually, it's like, what the hell's this guy doing over there? What's so interesting that he's sitting there and not coming over to me? Most people, they have this habitual knowledge of people coming and doing shit to them, putting on halters, going for a ride, taking the halter off, going home. No relationship at all. People who, I love my horse, and they go ride their horse, but they didn't really even look in its eye for very long, and there was no connection really made. So you start doing this with an animal, and it starts relishing it, cherishing it. A lot of these horses and camels come out of lives, backgrounds where they haven't had any herd culture since the day they were born. Weaned very quickly and grown up by people. Bottle feeding was finished by people, and they probably saw their mother for a few weeks or a few days. And they're on their own. Now they're at the hands of people, and there's no culture. They've not learned how to feed, not learned how to feed themselves, not learned how to conduct themselves. And some do okay with it, depending on the personality, but a lot don't. And you start giving them some of this back. It's this culture, and it's based on this knowledge that Carolyn developed with wild horses, and they start making contact with you, and that's where the conversation starts. If it was a horse that was really shy, like baby camels, I've had really shy baby camels, I start to walk towards them and they run off. So when that happens, I run the other way. Do that 3 or 4 times, and then they go, "Wow, every time I run off, and they start feeling like, oh, it starts to bring them back through. And it's a bit of that sometimes with shy horses. With bolder horses, it's more like, hey, you're coming right over here. I don't know you. We just met. You're right in my face. This is not appropriate. You got to step back, and you go pat, tap, tap on the foot or something, and hopefully the horse will step back. By then, if you're doing it intelligently, if you're not doing it intelligently, you could get hurt if you're not gauging where the horse is at and where you're at and all that. And in time, their intelligence kicks in. I've had many horses that I've met for the first time within 10 or 15 minutes. They go like a double take on me, like, what the hell's going on here? You're doing something different. What is it? And then by the end of our little first session, they're kind of like, hey, can I come home with you? Kind of feeling almost sometimes.
They sense that you're different than the average
Yeah,
human in terms of how you relate.
Yeah, and it's like I've had I remember one instance really. I think it was Canada. This horse looked back at me and I went, "There you are," because up till then the horse had been kind of like, "People, where are you? Stay away. Okay, what the hell? Okay, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just don't mess with me too much." And then after 15 or 20 minutes with this horse, it's like, and I went, "There you are. I see you." And it was like I really could there's the little horse in there going, "Oh God, I didn't know it could be this way," or whatever, like, I didn't know people could be this way. Ah, and then at a certain point, I stopped doing, one of the reasons I stopped doing workshops was I was meeting all these horses and giving them a glimpse of something different, and then knowing they're going home at the end of the weekend and back to this again. Like, it's not fair. So partly that's one of the reasons I was doing some really enjoyable workshops to a large degree, but the follow through from people, it's a bit of a big ask to take people from where they've learned what they've learned about horsemanship to this approach
So you were doing workshops to teach people how to relate to animals differently?
with horses specifically in this case. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm thinking in terms of that contemplation, contemplative state that they're in, and if humans interacting with an animal, maybe you're taking them out of that state.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
Poking them, prodding them, hitting them, disciplining them for things they don't understand. If they understand it and they misbehave, you can discipline them, and then they basically go, "Thank you." Straight, you can see it in them. I was doing this process that Carolyn teaches that I've implement, and I was walking around a big paddock with a camel. It was Jelly when he was younger. And he was pulling all sorts of Swifties on me and getting around behind me and running off and galloping and stuff. Eventually, we've got a thing going, and I'm learning. This is my first time, really, with this. This is the first time I'm doing leading from behind as a process with an individual consistently. And so I'm learning and he's learning. And there was a certain point where he kept doing this maneuver, and he'd get off and kind of break the thing that we were doing. And so my job is just to keep on, no discipline, nothing. We're just working, and I just pick it up again, and we go around again. Big paddock, and what he's doing is he's and looking for his moment where he can make his move and break the thread that I'm trying to build, and he's testing me to see, is this guy worth me listening to? That's ultimately what's happening. And at a certain point, I found I was studied him enough in that early process, and I started picking up where where he was about to make his move. I would preempt, I was getting preemptive. So here he goes, he's about to pull it, and I caught him before he moved into it. So then he was kind of caught by that and straightened and continued along instead of breaking away. And as that happened, I felt this pulse. I was about 15 feet behind him, or 10 feet. I felt this pulse, almost a wind. It wasn't really, but it felt like that. And it was his respect. And it was like, wow, you can feel that's respect. That's how respect feels. It actually has an energy that's healing and connective. And at the end of that session, we finished off and nuzzled up a little bit. And all the previous sessions, we'd nuzzle up a little bit, and then he'd go, kind of do a little snarky thing on me. This time it was gone. Something had we'd moved past that.
I think the word respect means I see you.
Right.
That's the etymological root of that word. Like, yeah. So it was seeing you because it was looking out for you and wanting to know if it could maybe trust you or connect with you or respect you. And there was that point when you felt seen and respected. But I wanted just to pivot to: have you read any accounts of where humans have been raised by animals?
Oh yeah, a little bit.
And I think it was the one where
Some
like
wolves.
wolves. I think a child
A bit
was
of wolf raising in Europe.
Right,
like little kids that are
got
abandoned
lost
or
or
something.
whatever. Yeah, have you read any of those accounts, or do you know anything about?
They don't do very well.
Right. Yeah.
They're because of the human brain.
Right.
It needs certain kinds of stimulus.
Right.
To fully develop into what we know today as a human with a brain. And so they don't learn a lot of things, and language is very hard for them. If they get them soon enough, they can help some of that. But if it goes on a bit too long,
then the opportunity to develop that part of the brain's gone.
So they might revert to the floor on all fours in a crisis. They might be barking, whimpering, things they learned around the wolves or the dogs.
Quite remarkable that a human could even survive that way, or even that the pack of wolves would. Well, they obviously adopted that human child.
Yeah. I tried to meet her, but she was very shy. There was a woman in California, in Lake County, who was from the Middle East. I think she was Palestinian. When she was young, an orphanage was raided somehow or another for some reason, and she was taken away and given to a Israeli family, I think, who had camels. And I don't know how old she was, young, and she was put out to live in the camel barn. Or where in the camel paddock, I guess there was a shed. She lived in that, and she grew up around these camels in the camel herd. She was obviously already this big or something, but her brain was already on the way, but full development. But I really wanted to meet her and just sit down with her and hear her story about her camel family, basically, because that's where she didn't. The Israeli people who owned her didn't interact with her in a real
so she interacted more
way
with camels than she did with people.
Yeah, and in California, she went off. She got her son's help or something. She went off. Found herself a camel, and brought it home in the backyard. But,
have you? I don't know have you ever experimented with psychedelics at all? Because I have, and one thing I noticed with low dose psilocybin, so magic mushrooms. If ever I take a low dose of psilocybin and I'm in nature, I have not intimate sexually.
No, I know what you mean.
I have intimate encounters with animals.
Yeah.
It's like birds will come a lot closer, like dragonflies, butterflies, things that would normally keep quite a distance from me. And it's not psychopathology. I'm not imagining it.
No, they really happen. Yeah.
I'm not that out there that this is not happening. I'm still with it enough. I'm like, okay, I've never been like I've had birds literally come this close and flap around and land on a branch like really close to me and not have no fear.
Right.
So whatever the psilocybin's doing, like I know it increases.
You've gone into the perceptual mind and the energy. Your whole
is it like the non-human contemplative state? Is it like I'm on their level?
You're closer to that.
Closer to their level.
Yeah, you're like it's a lot of animals. Like domestic animals is one thing, but a lot of animals that haven't had contact much with people. If you, as a Westerner, come near them, they're already cautious because your breathing's shallow, your pupils are something or other, the energy in your body's doing something, your energy body's shrunk from what it might otherwise be, and this is not trustable.
Right.
You're not you're not presenting as a trustable human being. Whereas something like that, or sitting, meditating, contemplating, going deep, that all starts to change, and then the animals can feel like, oh, I can be around. Oh, or this is interesting. What's going on here? Fly over and check that one out, or whatever. I've had similar. I do a thing called natural walking. It's my term, where it's just contemplative walking, breathing, posture, flow, and often I'll walk past birds or wallabies or something. I'll just walk right through them.
And they don't scatter.
They just kind of
Right.
I'm like part of the
Like
scene.
you're one of them, or
I'm
part of the scene. Right.
And I'm not representing a problem or a threat or
you're not out of place.
I'm not directing attention onto something. I'm more like this, and that has a big effect. That's something, like what is it? Somewhere in the book I talk about if you go to a piggery and look over the railing and look at the big fat pig lying there. She's 500 pounds or something, suckling some piglets, and she can't walk. And she's lived there her whole life. And then you go out into the bush and you encounter up close a wild boar who gives you a look. There's someone there. It's fully alive. It's like vibrant. It's powerful. It's conscious. It's, but the other pig's lying there like this. It doesn't even really know what a pig is or how to be. And Western humans typically have more of that pig in the piggery quality than the Aboriginal warrior of 200 years ago, who's more conscious, who would look at you like that boar did, much more conscious and vibrant. So it's like, in some ways, we've advanced a lot in human culture, also regressed a lot in our own intellect. Yeah, big, psychic, feeling world, small, very small now. I sounded like a Tibetan saying that.
After so many requests to create a more affordable alternative to shadowboxing mastery, I've created Shadowboxing Level 1, a 5-week introductory program focused on the foundations of shadow work and how to apply this in any area of your life. Whether you're a therapist, a coach, or just someone with a passion for self-development, this program will equip you with the principles, the tools, and the know-how to achieve life-changing breakthroughs for yourself and or your clients on a daily basis. Using my proven method, Shadowboxing Level 1 teaches you the skills to create satisfying and lasting intimate relationships, reconcile past traumas, improve health and well-being, manage addictive behaviour patterns, and much more. Head to my website at isaiahcoaching.com or check out the show notes to find out more. Before I pivot into this next conversation, I want to open up. I just want to do a graphic warning for any vegans that might be listening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so a good friend of mine from Perth in Western Australia worked in an abattoir for, I think, something like 20 years.
Yeah.
And we happened to drink ayahuasca together quite a few times. And the ayahuasca really changed his relationship to the animal kingdom.
Right.
But not to the extent that he stopped working in the abattoir. And he was sharing with me what changed for him through that time. And he said before he was very disconnected to, the animals that he was slaughtering, the cows, that it was like a job and a function, and that maybe he'd become desensitized somewhat. Mm-hmm. And then he said he became very sensitized to what he was doing, but that also his relationship to the cows had changed, and his relationship maybe to himself. And he was telling me how he would still continue to kill the animal, but that before he did, he would connect with it this is what he's reporting and he's describing, is that he would somehow connect to the soul of the animal before he would kill it. I think they put a bolt or something into the head's foot, so it's a quick sudden death. But rather than just do it unconsciously, he would take a moment. Mm-hmm. And he said it wasn't long, maybe a couple of minutes or something. He would just connect with that animal. And he said at some point he would interpret that he would get a knowing look from the cow.
Go
And
ahead.
say, it's okay now. Yeah, I'm ready. And then that he would kill it. And he said that profoundly changed his relationship to his job.
Yeah.
And
Well, I like that.
he was, because I mean, we eat animals. Humans eat animals. Not all humans eat animals. I eat animals. And, you know, I appreciate people that don't, and I appreciate where they're coming from, and I respect their choices and decisions, but I don't think we're necessarily, you know, they're trying to push this plant-based diet onto us. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily great for our health. People may have different ideas about this. I think it's a natural order of things that animals eat animals, and we're an animal, and that, you know, the worms will eat me when I'm done, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this?
Eating animals, killing them.
Yeah. Did you eat animals?
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't have any, and you've had these profound relationship with animals, and that hasn't stopped you consuming them. And
Well, I was a vegetarian for about 40 years.
Were you?
Yeah.
Right.
And a little bit of vegan here and there briefly, but I never could pull off the vegan thing. So, you know, I'd eat some egg and some fish and stuff like that, some chicken occasionally, but I'd stay away from the other stuff mostly. Um, what to say about it?
Yeah.
I can hear all the people going, "Oh," but
well, I guess
one of the things.
I guess what I want to say about it before we go on is that I respect the vegans' choices to eat plants.
Absolutely.
But I suspect that some or many vegans may not respect my choice to eat animals.
Yeah.
And I think
there's carnivores like that too, who pretty heavily push the carnivore thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's this same on both sides, really. Probably more going on the vegan side, though.
What, the carnivores that push the carnivore
vegans,
diet?
They really push the carnivore thing hard.
Right.
They're kind of extreme. There's that too.
Yes.
And that's the same thing, really, just with a different medium.
Right.
It's the same neurosis, lunch righteousness.
Right.
It's food righteousness.
Yeah, righteousness. I think that's the point I'm trying to make around where an attitude of I'm on the right side of this conversation.
One thing that's occurred to me sometimes is the vegetarians, vegans, they want to not eat meat because they love animals or respect animals. But if meat's put in front of them, they are repulsed. You know, here they are loving animals. And there's a bit of animal on the plate. Now in that form, they're repulsed by it. They can't continue loving it, and they can't imbibe it or consume it. You know, more traditional cultures would tend to be more in the line of out there hunting, killing, eating, celebrating, rejoicing, really receiving that animal into their whole system and into their psyche and into their world of magic and everything else. You know, there's all of that as well, but there's also going back to horses and so on again. I was at a natural horsemanship clinic once, and the clinician was talking about saddles on horses and how foreign this is to a horse, because it's like throwing a lump of meat on a horse's back, which should cause terror to the horse. And so that was sort of what he was somehow espousing, even though this is how we work, this is how we deal with it, and this is how we get around it. But it's completely, you know, and some of these natural horsemanship type people in that realm of things might talk about before you come to work with your horse, don't eat meat because they'll smell it on you and that'll make them scared. It's all total bullshit.
Is it? Right.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, there's really no vegan out there. Horses aren't vegans. Camels aren't vegans.
Right, because when they're eating the grass, they're eating insects.
Insects, slugs, eggs, eggs occasionally, lizards.
Yes, there's that misconception that cows are vegetarian.
It's salad with meat on top. Yeah, and sometimes on a good spring field, there's a lot of meat on top. It's like 4 or 5 cups of bugs a day.
Right, yeah.
On top of their salad, you know. And without that, if you put a horse into a room, a clinical room, and feed it washed hay that's got all the bugs and stuff taken off it, or some kind of processed food,
You get sick.
it's not going to do very well after
Yeah,
a while.
right.
These things are necessary. These gorillas, big vegan icon, all kinds of crap, all kinds of insect and grubs and things they're eating all day long. And it's like, there isn't really a vegan. There might be, but there's in the mammalian world, in the large mammals and small and medium mammals, there's not a vegan out there.
Right.
And the philosophy of human veganism is, it's a human thing. It's a human thing. It's got a thing to it. It's got an issue. To me, there's a bit of an issue there. You're in the world and you're sequestering yourself to eat nothing but broccoli and it has to be washed so there's no remnant of any animal on it. And where are you really living?
And you can't cut that broccoli with a knife that's been used to cut meat the day before or something like that.
Some people might go that far.
I've
Kosher foods.
Yeah,
and
I've
stuff.
seen that level of
okay.
extremism around it. At that point, I think maybe, it's a form of extremism. I want to get back to your book, because I'm only a third the way through it, and you gave me a spoiler, and I don't mind that you did, that you said, well, first of all, a couple of things. What are some of this? I know that non-human contemplation is one of the themes of the book.
Yeah.
Are there others, like strong themes that or messages, personal messages that you're wanting the reader to imbibe through reading your book? Like, what are you wanting your readers to take from reading the book? I mean, it's entertaining and like they're like little anecdotal stories. It's not like it's an easy read, easily digested.
Yeah. Well, I think the fundamental thing, the primary thing, is the natural contemplation. I wanted to kind of introduce that in a broader way that hopefully is accessible to people. Once they read the whole book, they'll probably have because as the book goes on, I extrapolate and explain a little further and a little further. I don't just all come at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because it is a process. It was a process for me learning it. Took years. First it was like, oh, wow, that's cool. That sounds a good idea. I like that. But then it was like going through the process of learning it. And so the book can be a bit of a handbook of learning that, or to some beginning to learn that whole thing and understand that this is what's going on all around us and that we can be a part of that. We don't have to be up here. We can be a part of that contemplative process. And it's not religious. It's not, it's not part of some sect or cult. It's all the animals are doing it. Your trees are doing it in their own different kind of a way than animals. The grass on the lawn, it's like, it's all happening in various ways. And the more we become, in my own case, becoming more sensitive to that's changed my view and way of relating to things. I still have to contend with all the cultural add-ons that I grew up with. They still come up and go, hey, and I have to kind of look, sometimes not notice, sometimes I don't notice it, but then I catch myself later. But those things are there and they're pernicious and they're like habitual. So it's kind of like becoming more attentive to all of that. But so I think that's, to me, the crux of the book.
Yeah.
To introduce, and I'm hoping in some fashion that various biologists, scientists start picking up on it a little bit and start looking at it at least and giving it some voice, giving it some room, rather than what is happening, or in the last couple of 100 years with science is just less and less in that, and then
you mentioned that you made kind of off the cuff comment before we started recording that you die at the end of the book.
No, I was just kidding. I was just kidding
with
you.
me.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought you made me speak about some sort of metaphysical death or
no.
rebirth or something.
No. I'm not that lucky.
You're hilarious.
So the other part of the book, I guess, is the thread through the rest of another thread through the book is my relationship with my spiritual teacher, Adida, and how he actually took this fairly fearful guy through a process at this Fianna Zoo about this process of fearing no more, which is the same thing. It's another way of describing it. And all the various impactful things that occurred between us, where he was able to take me further, dig me deeper, um, and basically give me another look on life, a different outlook on life that affects everything for me.
By calling his zoo Fear No More, do you think his message is that if we learn these lessons from the animal, that we could go into that feeling of fear and surrender to it in the way the animals do, so that we come out the end fearing no more? Is that something that you think he might have been wanting us to understand?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that through your process, do you think that you have less fear than the average man, or that you fear less? Or
I don't know about the average man, but I have less fear than I used to.
You do? Okay, right.
And what we're talking about here is chronic fear. There's the acute fear, which is fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's what an animal will feel, and they go bang, they run or they fight.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the incident's over, they get a breather and they rebalance and they go back to contemplating.
They can also shake it off if they have a.
There's there can be that shaking off too.
And I think trauma therapists have studied that, and they said that that's a natural instinct in an animal to discharge the
shivering
trauma
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that they release it rather than holding on to it. And they reckon that the primate brain, the cortex, overrides that natural instinct. And that's why humans can trap trauma in their body, because we don't shake it off straight away.
Right.
So there's that acute fear, if it's involved in a fight or a near-death experience, and it shakes that off. Animals can have chronic fear, because you can see like a dog that's been mistreated by its owner. It's like always cowering and kind of hypervigilant.
Dogs that have come into contact with humans, by and large, to varying degrees, sometimes a tiny bit, sometimes a huge amount, become traumatized and become if you're in a wild dog pack, you want to stay in the pack. So you mimic and you mimic the behaviors and the attitudes and the psychology of the pack. So they'll go, yeah, you can stay. And so a dog in a house is going to do that too. He doesn't want to be turfed out.
Right.
So he's going to study you and everyone else and figure out, this is the easiest way to stay in this house is to do all these different things and have these kind of attitudes, and that diminishes their contemplative capability. Right. And a lot of them, like I said, earlier with the horses, they come out of a litter at 2 weeks of age, and they're 4 weeks of age, and they're sold off, and they're just sold straight into some dumb home. Excuse me for saying so. And they grow up, they don't even know what the hell they really are. They're someone's pet dog, but they're not really Canis, whatever. They're not a wild, free, conscious being. And so they don't have that intelligence inherent in them anymore. And so, they can have this, like, if I get as fearful as you, maybe I can stay with you. But then you come across a few dogs that are not like that. They're kind of a superior being. I had a dog like that in California. He was not fussed by anybody's bullshit. He just was himself, and he was one of these impressive kind of dogs.
Do you hold non-human animals in higher regard than humans?
No.
You don't? No. You just see us as another animal. I mean, we're part of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, no, I don't see. It's the same.
Right. Yeah.
We're impaired, though, in our feeling being. In our contemplative feeling being, we're somewhat impaired.
Yeah, that's the impression. So it's not that. Yeah, so
we have all the same contemplative capabilities,
but we've maybe lost touch with our.
We've lost
through
touch.
Breaking our connection with nature.
Little kids have it more, and as they grow up, parents don't remember it.
Yeah,
and they push it away. They suppress it. So I remember. I wouldn't say I was a natural contemplative as a kid, but I had a lot more connection to that kind of thing. And as I grew up, a comment here, an incident there, it's like, I'm shutting this stuff down, because if I don't, I'm like that dog who's getting kicked out of the house. That's sort of you got to fit in.
Hey men, isn't it time you took your lovemaking to mastery level? Are you ready to impress your intimate partner and leave her fully satisfied yet wanting more? My Sexual Samurai program is designed to put you back in control of your sexual energy. Imagine being able to generate your full sexual potential, sustain it, and then direct it at will. In just a few weeks of disciplined practice, you'll master voluntary control over your sexual orgasm. You'll also learn how to integrate the hidden aspects of your sexual shadow, empowering you to step into your full masculine archetype. Whether your problem is performance anxiety, premature ejaculation, or low libido, or you're just wanting to step into your full masculine, my Sexual Samurai program is for you. Head to the Shadow Work Academy via my website or check out the show notes for more information. How does, what's the difference between meditation or mindfulness practices and non-human contemplative states, or are they kind of the same thing?
Well, there's all sorts of meditations. People are doing all kinds of weird stuff inside their bodies, up and down and left and right.
Are there any that closely resemble non-human contemplative states? Vipassana or
I'm sure there are. Yeah. There definitely are. There's a bunch that do.
Yeah.
But the non-humans have this capacity, which we have too, if we would engage it. And without books, without scriptures, without gurus telling you what to do, it's not enlightenment. Natural contemplation isn't enlightenment like that's described in the traditions. That's a different thing. That's a further on thing or something. So the whole human race could be a contemplative race, wiser, more benign, stronger, healthier, saner, happier, but not necessarily enlightened. That's something further. That's something beyond that. But and that would be great. That would be. But that's long gone. Centuries and centuries ago, probably when hunter-gatherers started moving into townships and things, it started changing. But I think the hunter-gatherers prior to all of that was something with this kind of original human contemplative culture.
What do you think about this process of realization or actualization in the human expression of to become actualized as a human?
What do you mean actualized?
To come closer to the non-dual state of being or awareness of the non-dual state,
or enlightenment, if you want to
call it that, or remembering what I am at my core essence. Yeah. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine just last week who's got a teacher, and she's studying non-duality. And so non-duality means unity. So there's oneness, or then there's duality. One becomes two.
Yeah.
The moment one becomes two, you've got duality, you've got self and other. And on the back of this book, I'm referring to this quote: wherever there is an other, fear arises.
Yeah.
And so before we identify as a sense of self and other, before that, there's no other. And so realization, actualization, or enlightenment, or non-human contemplation, to me, it's almost like they're not things of their self, they're pointing towards something. And what I think they're pointing towards is the state of non-duality, or the state of oneness.
Yeah.
What they refer to in Sanskrit as Satchitananda, like the absolute truth, which is pure consciousness, which is bliss. Yeah. And it's a state of oneness. So for me, my friend was telling me that it's a process of remembering and forgetting, and that it's actually quite simple, but that we really complicate it. And so what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, you just need to remember fundamentally what you are. And I say, well, what am I? And she goes, you're just pure love. And sometimes you forget that. And the moment you forget that, that's what you are. Fear arises, scarcity, the ability to be hurt by another, because there's another over there. So instead of just seeing you and I as one consciousness, one entity, or part of one consciousness, or part of a unity consciousness, the moment we take a human form, a human body, there's now subject, object, or self and other, and now fear and suffering can arise, but that can only arise when there is another. or a
Yeah.
separation from self.
Yeah.
So the real source of pain and suffering or fear is forgetting that we're all part of the oneness. And so then we forget that we're that, and then there's another, and fear can arise, and suffering and all that. And then the process is, I just need to remember that what I really am is I'm just pure love, and that's what we all are.
Right.
And at the highest reality, there's just an ocean of pure consciousness
Right.
that the quality of which is love.
Mm.
And so I'm playing around with this idea.
With me, or just for yourself?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I'm describing my
Yeah,
inner
I
process
see.
to you, and I've been practicing it a little bit, just in the last few days since I came across this concept, and there's definitely something to it, and it's really quite simple. So I'm noticing when there's tension in my body, or when I've gone into fear or scarcity,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, I've forgotten what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pure love. Like I'm pure consciousness. I'm one with everything. And the expression of that, the quality of that is love. And I just need to remember that. And so I go into remembering that, and something subtle shifts in me,
Yeah.
and the tension drops away,
Yeah.
and the fear drops away, and the scarcity and the lack and the suffering and all these things just kind of,
Right. But then it comes back.
yeah, she said it's like a process of remembering and forgetting. It
Right.
comes back when I forget what I am, and that this can happen hundreds of times a day.
Right.
And I'm from the way she was describing it, and she's being taught by somebody, and I've come across this concept of non-duality, and
Yeah.
there's a whole conference in science of
Sure.
non-duality. I haven't attended those conferences. I've had my own experience of non-duality through psychedelics and the experience of oneness, and so I'm developing a new practice that may be similar or related to this non-human contemplation, but I'm the way I'm languaging it is it's more a process of am I in the state of remembering what I am, or have I forgotten? And the moment I've forgotten what I have, I've disconnected from my higher self. I've
Right.
disconnected from
Right.
love,
Right.
and I've gone into duality, self and other, good, bad, right, wrong, God
Right.
and the devil,
Yeah.
Christian, Muslim, Democrat and Republican, white and black, and I've gone into duality, and in that world of duality is pain and suffering and division, and so I sense all that, and then and the felt sense
Well, it's not
of
just duality, there's multiplicity.
yeah. The one becomes two becomes multiplicity, right? And so, but just as a practice like meditation or
Yeah.
contemplation,
Yeah.
this is definitely impacting me in a way that nothing else
I get that. Yeah.
really
I
has. And
hear that.
so I just come back into remembering the like I've always known that there's love in me, and I sense myself as fundamentally a loving being, but I can go into fear and hate and judgment and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff. And if I was to uh, audit myself, like what's going on when I'm in those states of contraction and tension, it is that I've just forgotten. And if I just correct and go, oh, that's what I'm just love, and then ask myself, what does love want
Mm-hmm.
in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm now being informed by that question rather than my experience of fear, because there's this other. So I guess in a roundabout way, I'm asking you. You put this quote on the back of the book, and it wasn't an accident. And you put a very specific quote here: "Wherever there is another, fear arises." Can you explain that
So
in your words?
that's a ancient quote. It's from the Upanishads,
Yeah.
the Forest Upanishad. And it's basically commenting on wherever there is another, wherever there is separation, there's fear. So if I'm sitting across from you, which I am right now, I'm feeling separate from you. There's some fear there
Mm.
because there's a gap, there's a lack, there's absence of connectivity
Mm.
with prior reality. For me to feel connected to you, it's not just a matter of me doing some gymnastics or something. It's feeling prior reality, which occurs, um, it doesn't typically occur like that. Maybe for some great advanced being it might, but for me, I have to be feeling, I have to have a dual sensitivity. Going back to non-duality, I have to have a dual sensitivity to my sense of separateness and fear as a result, and the prior reality. When those two are matched in a certain sense, then I've moved through to a more contemplative depth of awareness. So it's like the animals, they know they're out in the pasture, they're vulnerable. They feel that. There's no question of that. They're not trying to get away from that. They're not trying to escape it with an idea of some kind or a holiday somewhere. They can't. It's there. So what are you left with at that point? No escape from death. In the universe of existence, if you stay with that, you'll be bled into a deeper, more surrender. You have to you surrender to that. You're in the paddock, you're going to be eaten, you surrender to it. You let go into that death, into that fear. And on the other side of that, immediate to that is this perennial existence, this contemplative awareness that, you know, dissolves the fear. The fear is gone. The separation is gone. I watched a chameleon once eating a cricket. I'm going to tell two little stories here, if you don't mind. I watched a chameleon once eating a cricket. So he's on a perch and his tongue flashes out, pulls in this cricket, maybe two crickets at once, I think. Anyway, he's munching these things down. And I'm like, wow, I'm watching it. And I was watching that, I was aware of my own situation that was similar. Mortal, vulnerable. If I was that cricket, that would be me. So it's like, that was very tangible to me. And I was like, and that kind of dropped me. I accepted that and I dropped. And then I watched sort of could see the cricket and the chameleon becoming one entity, merging, not even physically, just psychophysically. That was instructive to me about eating meat for one thing, but eating just consuming everything's eaten and everything eats. And if you're in this place, that's what's happening. Even if it's microbes chewing on your toes or something, something's eating you. And if you're really aware of that, it makes you serious. And a lot of this other stuff will fall away and you can become much more one-pointed in this process that I'm kind of alluding to. Another instance was, and this will happen not always, but an antelope being chased by a leopard or a cheetah. They're on the savannah. They're galloping full speed. The antelope's doing everything it can to escape. He's not playing games either. The leopard clips his hoof. He tumbles. The leopard or the cheetah is suddenly on him. Teeth are going in. This creature, this antelope, has lived its whole life knowing on some level,
this moment is
or
coming.
being aware that this was always going to happen. Lived in a culture that was contemplative because this is what happens. Isn't trying to create anything else. There's no second story. This is what happens to these creatures. And the leopard, the cheetah, has lived its whole life contemplating, being a contemplative of some kind. The two are now feeding and being fed. One's being eaten, one's feeding. They've lived alongside each other on the savannah for millennia, and in this life, they probably know each other at a distance already. It's like, or can know each other's smells. It's just like a wonderful kind of a terrifying, wonderful expression of the contemplative universe, And like I said early on, it's like everything's changing here, constantly changing. Yet there's this thread of contemplative universality that, on another day, that lion or cheetah could be resting under a tree, and the little antelope group will walk right past it 10 feet away. It's not feeding time. I'm not afraid of you. Just walk on by, and the leopard will look up, or the cheetah will look up and go, okay, see you tomorrow. And they walk on, and like, phew, glad he was having an off day, and they
Or he
continue
wasn't
on.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like there's much more going on out there than just hunter, predator, and a lot of wildlife shows will just show these predators hunting antelope and whatever and make a big drama out of it. There's so much more finesse and elegance to it than just that.
I'm sitting here wondering if all fear could be distilled down to primarily the fear of death. Like, we have all different fears, but if I'm thinking all the things I'm afraid of, and you take that to the nth degree, it's death.
It is. It's death.
All fear could be distilled down to the fear of death.
Even me taking your glasses away from you is going to bring up your fear of death, because you need that thing.
You won't be able to hunt.
You won't identify it as I'm going to die, but that's the thread.
So all fear could be distilled down to the fear of death, and then the animals are aware of what's coming, and they surrender to that fear. There's no plan B, and through that enter a state of fear no more. And it's sounding like to me maybe we have that facility and have lost it, or we don't have the awareness, or we're not entering that state naturally. And so, I mean, I would say to some extent I live in chronic fear, chronic anxiety, and there are, I don't know if it's the Tibetans or the Nepalese, but there's some communities that meditate daily on death.
Yeah.
And that meditation on death, I think,
some of the Hindus meditate in the charnel grounds with skulls attached, strapped to their shoulders so they never forget.
Yeah, I mean, since I hit about my mid-50s, like, I never even thought about death. And then in my mid-50s, I had a scare. I thought I had leukemia or something, was going to die. And then that put me in touch with my mortality. And I pretty much think about death daily, for the last 10 years. Right. I've got a skull, on the thing behind me there. And that's to remind me of my mortality and that death is coming. And there's this natural tendency to go into fear. But it sounds to me like some state opens up when, rather than resisting or going to contraction around that fear, one meditates on it or goes into it or accepts it as a natural order of things, and then moves through some process where that fear doesn't have the same hold or impact, or say negative impact on the psyche, than if you're in an acute fear state. I think as I get older, I think there's less fear. Like you were saying, you have less fear. I'm just, life and death are inseparable, and we love life, but we tend to not love death. And so I think there's something neurotic in our, something natural in about the fear of death, but I think there's also something neurotic about it. And I'm wondering if maybe religion was created to deal with that fear of death and creating this afterlife. My belief system is that there is no death. There's the death of the body, but that beyond the death of the body, whatever this contemplative state is, or this ocean of consciousness that's loving is, or whatever, I believe that's the state of consciousness that exists when the body's done. And so I guess from that perspective, do you have a viewpoint around physical death, and do you see that as the end? Do you see that?
But I don't know. I mean, in a certain sense, I just died now. Like I said earlier, I was joking with you. I died at the end of the book. I just died now. You and I just died. He died this moment, that moment's not coming back.
Yeah.
It died.
Mm. Mm.
So we're dying.
Mm.
We just did die, and we're going to die again in the next second. In the next second, I remember once taking nitrous oxide at the dentist.
Yeah.
I went for 6 treatments, and each time it was nitrous oxide, and it seemed to speed up the frame,
Mm.
like in the movie of
Mm.
life. So like, instead of now we're talking,
Yes.
I took a breath,
Mm-hmm.
it went, and eventually the dentist goes, "Hey, we found something else." And I'm like, I'm past Pluto, and I'm like, what the hell? In 3 minutes, I'm past Pluto.
Mm.
But it's like, I think that's reality. That is this place. It's Adida referred to it as click clack of life, click clack, click clack, click clack, click clack, click clack. It's a machine. We're living in an organic machine of eating and being
Mm.
eaten, and changes, and seems incredulous,
Transformation.
and yeah, it seems just bizarre and incredulous, and
Mm.
there's no rhyme or reason to it for the rational human mind. But where am I going with this? Death. Oh, well, when I was a kid, I was in New Guinea, and I went up to I don't know what sparked this off, but found myself at my dressing room table, put my hands on the bench, looked in the mirror, and who am I? It was very intense. I'm like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And I guess my young clarity, youthful clarity, was much more precise than later on. And I don't know. Anyway, repeating this into my eyes, I would spiral. My sense of Stuart as a human, as a body, would just spiral out. Rainbow of colors, whole universe was spiraling. Everything was just like, and then it would go blank, and I'd wake up on the floor, or I'd recover on the floor. I did this multiple times for some months or something when I was a kid, and that gave me a sense of something way beyond what I'm doing here, walking around and going to school, and um and then later on, back at that other crisis when my rock climbing finished and I didn't know what the hell to do, I was out west, and you know, psychophysical events around us are also part of the whole story, I think. I'm kind of rambling here a little bit probably, but there was a great storm that came rushing across the desert and right over where I was. And after it left, it was like, wow, that was like incredible. Just a funnel of one big fat cloud
Mm.
broiling, and then this shower of heavy rain that just thundering down, and it went through the desert and came right over where I was. And after that, whether it was that, I don't know. If it was if that was part of the stimulus, I don't know. But it was dramatic for me. But this inquiry, who am I, came up again,
Mm.
and it was, I don't know about when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, I had some illnesses that were nearly life threatening. I don't remember much about them, but so perhaps that was part of a stimulus then. I don't know. But at this time, I've finished rock climbing. I don't have a future. I'm going to die. Basically, it's like I went into 2 months of living terror, 24 hours a day. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function, could barely talk. I was really fucked up.
Because
And
of an illness or because of a fear of
no,
death,
just,
or
mm, what's the word?
spontaneously?
Desiderata? I don't know what the word is. No meaning, no
Oh,
purpose,
right.
nothing.
Oh, nihilism
Done.
almost.
No
Right.
rock climbing,
Mm.
done. I don't know what else to do. I'm not going to go do what my dad did. I'm not going to be a scientist or a pilot or anything, like, done. So I'm dead. I've
Mm.
got nothing to live for.
Mm.
And I went into this real pit of fear. And at a certain point, I'm not getting out of this. I better start doing something. So I started to do something, but little simple stuff just to kind of
Mm.
keep functioning a little bit. But anyway, I was out in the desert, and this storm happened, and blah blah blah. And then I started this inquiry popped up again, and it took me, and each inquiry session took me through the fear to this other place, this other, not even place, state of awareness that transcended everything I know. And so, to answer your question, there are two instances, at least, of evidence for me that there's death. This death of this body is not the end of anything,
No, I agree.
and it's not necessarily I'm going to reincarnate as somebody over there
Yeah.
or something. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm totally open to, but this existence is perpetual.
It's a new beginning.
It's not even that.
No,
No,
I think
there's
that's
no.
that.
It's like that's one way to look at it, but I
Yes.
don't see it quite that way. I suppose, yeah.
Well,
I just see it as a continuation.
I guess ends and beginnings is still in the world of duality.
I just see it as a continuation.
Yeah.
And you know, somewhere in the beginning of the book, I think I have a line that says, "Because you're alive, you're already free." I really feel that. Egoic, messed up, selfish, mean, cruel, loving, kind, human, animal. You're alive. It's alive. Think about that for a minute. Could be nothing, and it's alive. This is alive. And the life that's in me is exactly the same thing that's in you. It's like the differentiation's only superficial. I could think all kinds of separative things around in relationship to everything else, but it's just superficial. It's the same life. I'm disenfranchising myself from life, you know. One of the things Adida told me once, the very first thing he formally kind of told me was, "Hey, if you don't get over your abstraction from life, you might end up killing somebody." I'm like,
It's an odd thing to say.
"That's the first thing you said to me?" I was like, "God." And so I'll chew on that for a while, process that. What he was trying to point out to me, I feel, is that it's the same thing everybody does. If I feel abstracted, if I feel separate, I could end up killing somebody.
Yeah, I get it.
But before that, in my feeling separate, I've kind of killed myself. I've disenfranchised myself from the life force that's flowing through me by going like this. I am dead now, ostensibly, or somewhat, somehow. Still, I'm alive. You know, I'm disavowing all positive life virtues by being separate, you know, in that action of separation. And yet I'm still alive. It's like, that's incredible to me. Not incredible, like amazing, but it's just like, wow. It's like, so because you're alive, no matter what you do, no matter how you function, you are free. And if we can, the more we can kind of take that on board, then I think the energies or the processes in our lives can start flowing more fully, more openly, um, and also accept that there can be, if that's really cognized, there's no fear.
So the state of when you go from fear to fear no more, what arises in the fear no more space is the free.
Yeah,
I'm free because I fear no more.
you're free or you're almost free. Yeah. He said the animals, Adida said the animals are almost free. Some can become fully free, but all the contemplatives, because they're not attached to the fear world. So we're actually attached to the fear world. We like it. It's familiar. It's kind of comforting, and it's useful. We think we go, because I'm afraid I was able to do that thing.
Motivate. It's a motivator.
Or if I wasn't afraid, I couldn't have Yeah. So we kind of try to glorify it.
I think fear is the highest motivator.
Yeah, probably. And yet, for us, but if you were free, that would be a different statement. You'd have a different statement if you were free.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
if you were free of that.
why would there even be a motivator? At that
Yes.
point,
Yeah,
why
right.
would there be some purpose? You'd be free.
Yeah.
It's like something outside the realms of human
free
society,
state.
human culture. Yeah.
Yeah, free state doesn't have a fear of death because it's free of that.
Yeah, and that's the only primary. That's the ultimate agenda: fear of death. So everything's constructed around that. All of our civilizations, rockets to, Elon Musk's terrified. He's like wants to go to Mars and everywhere else. It's like no different than any of the rest of us. But it's like we look at these as grand adventures of human ingenuity, sure, but we're all terrified. All our politicians are scared shitless.
Yeah.
Find me a big camel any day. I don't. Yeah. So.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm feeling less fear and more free.
Cool.
How could people get a copy? So, Lightning, Thunder, Cows.
Yeah, it's Can I just say a little bit about it?
Please do.
How long have we been talking?
I have no idea.
I
could tell you. What do you want to tell us about the book, and I'll tell you how long we've been talking.
Well, the title is Lightning, Thunder, Cows, and the purpose of that title is revealed in the book.
Okay.
I won't give it away here. And the subtitle is Countering the Myths of Big Death, Big Religion, Big Conflict, and All Other Fearful Big Ideas. So through this contemplative process, this naturally contemplative process, all of that can be ameliorated. All of our issues can be put to rest if we allow the contemplative thread of existence to penetrate our skulls and our hearts. So that's sort of the reason for the book, and it's the reason for the Fear No More Zoo. And even in the community of people around Adida, nobody really took the zoo thing seriously. Nobody was instilled in it the way I was. It was sort of happening over there, and it was happening with me and some other people a little bit here and there. But and I was really committed to it. I really passionately invested myself in it time and time again, even with him getting after me, and I just had to, stay the course and learn by staying the course, go deeper. And so I feel like, I was always hoping I would pass it on to somebody, but that somebody never showed up while I was still there. And so this book's an attempt to pass the torch, but not just for those people. I wrote it to be accessible, I think, to anybody who would be interested, whether they're interested in Adida or not. There's still a lot in there. So, yeah. And I read it again recently.
Did you?
Yeah, I just sort of prior to coming here.
How was that?
A couple of weeks ago.
To read your own book again.
It's actually I was like, this is well done. And that's rare for me, because usually with my writing, I read it 6 months later and I go, oh, that's crap. But I worked on this so much. I think it's got, it's almost transcending me. The process of working on the book was sort of something that I read it and I kind of like, who wrote this? Like, I know I wrote it, but it was like, this sounds sort of like me, but it doesn't sound, it's got something else in it.
Yes.
And I think it's the combining of myself with this contemplative thread is partly that contemplative communication coming through.
Yeah. Look, I'm not an avid reader, and most books I started I never finished, and that's one of my weakest traits, I think.
Yeah.
Is that I get
I'm like that a bit too.
2/3 the way through a book, and I do intend to finish this, and it is an easy read. I just have a very busy life.
Yeah. And it's in bite-sized sections.
Yeah, that's what I like about it, and some sections are like 1 page or less, and that's the kind of book I like to read, because you can practically pick it up at any point and just read that little chapter, because it's not like there's a thread through it, of course, but
every section's really written to stand alone as well as be connected to the whole.
Correct, yeah, and it's an enjoyable read. It's an easy read. What's this here? Fearing No More.
This is sort of this book distilled into 12 pages of a handbook.
The essence, is it the essence of the book?
No stories and stuff. It's just the kind of the philosophy.
Okay.
You can have that.
Oh, thank you. That I could finish in a night.
Yeah, probably.
But digest for a lifetime. Thanks for coming on the
you.
show, Stu.
Thank you.
Yeah. These are the kind of esoteric kind of conversations I love having, and they don't seem to have a middle, a beginning, or an end.
No, we could keep going, and it kind of just keeps rolling, non-dual.
Yeah, exactly. I hope my audience finds it interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And where can they get a copy of the book? Through Amazon?
Just on Amazon. Yeah.
Lightning Thunder Cows.
Lightning Thunder Cows.
Go on you, Stuart.
Thank you, Pete.
Pleasure, man.
You too.
Pete Isaia is an Australian trauma therapist and integration coach. You can find him at isaiacoaching.com and connect with him on Instagram at isaiacoaching. This podcast was produced by Quinika Davis, edited by Beck Isaia and Luca Young, and the score was produced by Joshua Richards.